Good morning. It is the vlog ride, and we are driving into work. I skipped out of the gym this morning because my 3-year-old got me up at like 2 in the morning because that's toddler life. But it's cool. It's what happens when you have a toddler. Anyway, I wanted to so I've been talking a lot about books. Well, I've been talking a lot about movies, a little bit about books. I am still working on the script and figuring out what I'm going to do for Sorcerer's Stone. So we're getting there. I wanted to talk about games too. I've mentioned 76 before. I've tried to talk about it a couple of times, just wasn't really happy with the conversation I was having. So I'm going to try and start that conversation again. And by I wasn't happy with the conversation I was having, I mean I wasn't happy with the way that I was just kind of rambling. Because games will make me do that. I love games so much. I do all kinds of gaming. I do tabletop gaming, both as a player and running tabletop games. I play in LARPs. I've run LARPs before, both as the primary storyteller and as an assistant storyteller. I do console gaming a little bit. The extent of my console gaming really is Fallout 4 and Fallout 76. Occasionally, I will play No Man's Sky. Occasionally. And then, are there any other games I play on the console? Not really. If there's a fighting game that everybody's playing, I might join in for a round or two of that, because they can be fun sometimes. I don't do computer gaming as much as I used to, because I don't have a dedicated PC for gaming. If I'm gaming on a PC, I have to use somebody else's PC. The laptop I have is just enough to be able to write on right now. So them's the breaks. But when I do PC game, I usually play City of Heroes. I have played a lot of MMOs over the years. I do still play EverQuest every once in a while, because it is probably, other than City of Heroes, it is probably one of my favorite games to play. I love it so much. It is still very old school in so many ways, but it is such a great game. I started playing EverQuest back in the very early days. I think it was just before Ruins of Kunark came out, or right around the time that Ruins of Kunark came out. I played Dungeons and Dragons Online, enjoyed it. I played Dark Ages of Camelot, and I enjoyed it. I played Champions, didn't enjoy it. I think that was what it was called. I played DC Online, did not enjoy it. I played Landmark and enjoyed the hell out of that. I miss it so much. I played EverQuest 2, didn't really enjoy it. I played World of Warcraft. I enjoyed it for a long time, but I kept getting disillusioned more and more with each expansion, when the uniqueness to building your character got less and less and got dumbified more and more. I can't really use another term for it. It used to be so much fun to build and develop your character in World of Warcraft, because you had these different talent trees that you could build off of, and it would unlock your character's powers in different ways. So you would have, shamans, for example, who would be spec'd in different ways. And even though they're the same class, they do not have the same things that they do in a group. They do not have the same gameplay. I used to play a hunter, and I played my two favorite classes to play were hunters and death knights. Sorry, I enjoyed the death knights. I did. I always feel like it is the gooberish thing to say, but I loved them so much for a while when talent trees were nifty and you could customize your death knight in nifty ways. But I used to play hunters, and with a hunter you go and you tame animals and they become your companions. I loved that so much. And in the very early days, there were you had abilities that you would train in your pets, which you do still kind of do. But in the early days, there were abilities you could only get to train your pets with if you tamed certain types of pets. So in order to teach your pet a certain type of attack or a certain type of defense, you had to go and you had to find the animal that naturally had that, and you had to tame that animal, and then you could teach your other pets that thing. But that's not all. There were special abilities that some animals and some creatures that you could tame only they had, and you couldn't teach other things that. Only those creatures or creatures just like them would have those abilities. And that was the awesomest thing. I don't remember what they're called, but it's this, it was this black and white lizard-like thing. I don't even remember where I got it. I got it in one of I want to say I got it in one of the nethery type realms. I don't remember what they're called because it's been a while since I played. But I'd gotten this guy, I named him Spike. When I'd first gotten Spike, the training stuff was starting to be dumbed down, but it wasn't completely nerfed yet. And Spike, I loved him so much. The type of lizard thing that he is a teleporter. Trying to fight these things was aggravating as hell because you'd be fighting it and it would teleport behind you. You're fighting this creature and it teleports behind you. It was so much fun in PvP zones because people hated him. Like when I had him out for PvP zones, people would ignore everybody else to go ahead and kill him because they knew how annoying he was. It was great, and also a good way for people to get away, or otherwise to be a distraction for people to deal with somebody. Because those could even make a rogue's day a nightmare. I loved them. I loved them so much, and he got nerfed so bad. Rogues didn't get nerfed because of course not, but Spike did. But Cataclysm was just the amount of dumbing down that was done with Cataclysm, and then just the way that the story goes for Cataclysm all just kind of combined to make me go, I'm done. I can't play World of Warcraft anymore. I can't keep getting my heart broken over and over again by the same game. I can't continue to pay money to something that I enjoy less and less with every expansion and every update. So yeah, I played World of Warcraft until Cataclysm. I enjoy gaming. I enjoy gaming because it's a kind of creative outlet, in a little bit of a different way. So it's not always as intensive as writing, for example, but there is when you are playing, a certain amount of creativity that goes into what you are doing. When you are creating a character, especially when you are running a game. And this goes for whether it's a tabletop or a LARP, or whether it's a computer or console game. Any game that has you do some kind of customization and creation to your character invites a certain amount of creativity. And I really like that in games. That personalization gives games a creative verve that I enjoy. It invites imagination in a way that, playing Super Mario or Zelda, when I was growing up, never did. So I really like games like that let you do that kind of customization and personalization and creation on the outset. Because when that character is you put yourself into the story of the game in a different way. When I played Super Mario Brothers as a kid, I was just the red dude running across the screen. There was nothing else to it. It was squish the Goombas, kick the turtles, avoid the hammer guy, hit the blocks, catch the flag, do the castle, beat the baby Bowser, and the princess is in another castle. There was nothing else to it imagination-wise. They were fun games, and I enjoyed playing them, and they were challenging, and I would, struggle to figure out how to beat a level. But it was skill. It was not from what I put into it as a player imagination. When I go and I create a character in Fallout 4, I am building this character from the ground up. Sometimes I get lazy, I just want to play, so I just go with default Nora and we go from there. But when I sit down and I want to actually, frame and make my character, and even when I just go with the default, I still do this because I have spent so many hours sitting and customizing and creating the look of my character. It is my character. It is my kid I am going and trying to find in the wasteland. It is my settlements that I am building and customizing. It is my stuff that I'm doing whatever. That even when I just accept the default, having the ability to do that character creation, that character customization in the beginning, and then going and building through the talent trees that you have with your perks, it lets me customize my character in a way that I want to do. Granted, I only have a few different customizations that I do in Fallout 4. I just haven't bothered trying other things. I usually do. My favorite to do in Fallout 4 is I will do a up-close meleeer and a sniper, or I will do a gun bunny who will also be a sniper. The sniping, just because it's so useful if you can get up to high place to just be able to clear out an area before you move into it, to loot it, to get in to find whatever person you need to find. So much easier when you can snipe shit. And then the gun bunny and the meleeing is really just how I feel like playing that character for up close combat. If I'm doing a gun bunny, I'm relying heavily on bats. So I'm, doing the shootouts. If I'm doing a meleeer, I only rely on bats for things like using blitz. Otherwise, I'm just slashing away. At my opponent, I'm not really messing with bats. And for sniping, you don't really do bats much. I'll use VATS for criticals, and I will use VATS to help me line up shots, especially when lighting is just really weird. But usually with sniping, I'm lining up the shot manually and taking it, because that's what you do. But yeah, there are, even with those two basic play styles, there are different ways that I can go about them. As far as, how much am I putting into perception for VATS, how much agility am I getting, exactly where am I putting those perks, and then what kind of side stuff am I doing to help shape out that character. But even beyond those two things, there are a lot of other things that I can do. I just haven't bothered to explore with them yet. And so there's a lot of possibility in what you can do there. I like that kind of personalization makes you feel invested creatively into a game that you're playing, and it really opens up the story in a whole new way. It is not just commands on a screen anymore. It is not just skill and strategy. It's narrative. And it's narrative that you're investing yourself in. It's not unlike reading a book. When you're able to connect into the game narrative in that way, because of the creativity you're putting into it, it is very much akin to sitting down and reading a book as to the connection you feel to the narrative. With a book, you feel that connection to the narrative because you are taking the words that are on the paper. Your brain is translating them and giving you the pictures. The writer is communicating a meaning, but the meaning that you're building from it is going to be a little bit different. It is going to be based on the exact meanings that you apply to certain words that are being used by the writer. There is a certain amount of creativity that comes with reading a book. And certain types of books are better at inviting that creativity than others. Books that use metaphorical language and that rely heavily on metaphor are really great for that kind of creativity, but they're not the only ones. It's a lot of it's the craft of the author, but a really good book will have your brain working creatively to interpret what's on the page, and it invests you in that narrative. When you feel like you are drawn into a book, that's why you feel like you're drawn into a book, because your brain is working creatively to interpret what is on the page for you to read the story. When you are when you are drawn into a book, that is a creative exercise. And it's really great. It's one of the things that people tend to enjoy in reading books, is the way that they're drawn into and invested in the story. That is creativity. It is a type of creativity. It is a level of creativity. It is the creativity that comes with interpretation. It is the work that your brain is doing for you to read that story. That happens with these games that let you create and customize your characters, and that let you customize your character as you're going along, to do different talent trees and different types of builds, and customize and build up those builds as you go along. So when I'm playing Fallout 4 or I'm playing Fallout 76, I have that kind of, this is my character investment in what's going on. So it is not just skill choice trees for quests. It is, what am I doing, and what am I building, and what things are mine that I'm claiming. And it's that same kind of investment that I get when I'm reading a really good book that draws me into it. You get the same kind of thing as a player in role-playing games. Role-playing games are all about building your character from the ground up and customizing that character as you go along. You can have certain types depending on the type of game you're playing, but there are all kinds of ways to build and customize that character and make it unique and make it yours. And you're doing that in the beginning, and you're doing that as you go along. And it really can invest you into the game. People don't get invested in their characters because they're weird. They get invested in their characters because of the time and creativity put into them. They get invested into a story not because there's something wrong with them, but because of how their character meshed into the story that's going on in the game and drew them in. It is not unlike reading a book and the creativity that happens when you are interpreting and building the story in your brain. It's what I really like about games. So games are something I really care about. They're something that I really enjoy. And there's a lot with them to talk about. Because games very obviously are art. There is, of course, craft that goes into building a game. There is a puzzle aspect to gameplay. That there is a utility aspect to gameplay, but none of those things prevent them from being art. If I write a book and I put into that book, it is narrative fiction, and I put into that narrative fiction a very pointed political message that I want to show my reader, that I want to teach my reader about, and that I want to convince them about. Having that message there is a utility. I am turning that book into a utilitarian piece with the express purpose of introducing an idea to my audience and convincing them of that idea. People do that with books all the time. We have some really famous books that is done with. That utility does not change the artistic value of my book. It does not change the artistic value of any other book that has been done with. The same goes with video games. Just because they have a utility, just because they have a puzzle aspect and a skill aspect, just like with the book that has a political purpose, the artistic value does not change. And you can see it. It's easiest to see this with narrative games. Games like Life is Strange, games like The Stanley Parable and The Beginner's Guide, that Innuendo Studios has talked about Life is Strange, and he's talked about The Beginner's Guide, and this idea of games as being an art form. Fallout 4, there is a narrative there that you can look at and examine. Any games that have a narrative aspect to, that have obvious metaphors in them, those are games that is very easy to see the artistic value in. That it is easy to see where this is art because meaning has been put into this. They're not the only games for it. They're not the only games that you can draw meaning from. You can draw meaning from Tetris if you look at it with a critical eye. You can draw meaning from Super Mario Brothers if you look at it with a critical eye. The first video from PBS Idea Channel when it was going was all about looking at Super Mario Brothers as a absurdist work. So, I mean, but you have to be willing to look at these things with a critical eye. And that's what I love about games. They invite that in a way that is interactive, and that interactivity I've done this a couple of times, but yeah, that ability to interact with a game makes a game more like a book than I think most people realize. When you look at a movie on a screen, some movies are very good at invoking deeper thought than just what's on the screen. A movie like Annihilation is really good for that, because of just the pure metaphorical nature of the entirety of the story. You walk away from that movie going, what happened? What did that mean? What did that ending mean? That is your brain engaging with the movie in a similar way that it engages with a book. Whereas a lot of other movies don't necessarily do that. That doesn't mean that they're not good. It doesn't mean that they're not enjoyable. It doesn't mean that they don't have artistic value, because they do. But you engage with them in a different way. And, you know, there are some movies that don't have much artistic value. But there is not... I don't always engage with a movie or a television show on a screen the same way that I do with the book. There is not that same level of engagement, because there is not the same work. Oh, sorry. There's not the same work that my brain is having to do with the images on the screen compared to the words on a page. I'm not having to build meaning the same way. If I am reading Harry Potter and Hogwarts is being described to me, I have to take those words on the page, and then I have to build the picture in my head. If I am watching the Harry Potter movie, all of that work is already done for me. I'm not having to build that. I'm being shown somebody else's interpretation. There is not a question of what kind of green is, is the Slytherin, is in the Slytherin colors. What kind of blue is that blue in Ravenclaw? There is not a question of how high the Whomping Willow is, or how deep the lake is. All of that is shown to me. I'm not interpreting that, and I'm not building that in my head. So there is not the same kind of engagement. It's only when ambiguity is added, usually for metaphor. It's only when ambiguity is put in somehow, injected into the narrative on the screen, that my brain then has to work creatively to put things together. I think that may be why horror movies can be so engaging sometimes, because there is ambiguity that comes with horror. It's part of how you build suspense, and it's how you build the scariness. You have to put things up. You have to talk about things or have things happen that you can't quite see all of. I think maybe that's why horror can be so engaging on the screen, and then because it's so engaging, so effective. But yeah, for a standard movie, there's just not the same level of creative engagement. If I am playing a video game like Super Mario, that is just pick up and play, and there is no customization to the character, there is no creation to the character, I just, pick it and go, if I even get to pick the character. There is only the engagement goes as far as the skill in the puzzle on the screen. It is a little bit more engagement than watching a movie, but it only goes so far. If I am playing a game where I am making choices, if I am playing a game where I am creating a character and I am developing a character, there is much more engagement with that media. And yeah, it is a lot more like the engagement that you have with the book than there is with a movie, because I am building, I am not just interpreting, I am building at least something that's going to be on that screen. And there is also a level of engagement with the story that's a little bit deeper than what you get with the book. Because when I am reading a book, or if you're reading one of my books, we do not get to choose what happens on that page. The exception being a choose your own adventure, but then you just get to choose the path. You don't necessarily get to choose the resolution. In a game, when you are given choice, whether that choice is from a selection tree, or whether that choice is from the combat actions that you take, and things like that, you are affecting the narrative outcome. There is a limit to how you can affect it, because there is a script that has to be written for that game to follow out. But even compared to a choose your own adventure, very often games can give you a great amount of control over how that narrative wraps up in a way that other media can't. And that's really amazing to me. It's amazing to me as a writer, because that's a level of engagement with somebody else's work that I don't have in other types of media. I would imagine for somebody who is not themselves, a writer or other type of artist, I would imagine that kind of engagement would just be incredible. That's a creativity that you don't do. If you're not a writer, you don't write stories. So you don't craft those stories. So being given a story that you have a hand in crafting, the outcome of, has got to be pretty amazing. So, I know how it feels as a writer. I can imagine, as somebody who doesn't write at all, that's got to be really neat. It's got to be a new experience. Sorry, I'm trying to turn. There we go. Yay! It's clear. So, yeah, it's really amazing to me. I love it. I love games. I love games for all of that. And, yeah. We'll wrap up our conversation there. The next time, this kind of gives you, like, how I look at games and why I care about games and, like, the overall framing of how I come to games. Next time I'm going to try to talk about Fallout 76. 76 is a very interesting game for me. It is a game I very much enjoy. I love playing that game. It is a game that a lot of people hate. Some people like okay, and some people really love. But it's a game that's got a lot more hate going at it, I think, than love. And it is not undeserved hate. But I do find it kind of interesting how I engage with the game versus how other people engage with the game. So I want to delve into that because I think that speaks to the power of media in a way other media can't. I just think it would be very interesting for talking about engagement with media in a interesting way. Interesting. So, yeah. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe, ring the bell so that you can get notified when I do other videos. I usually do 1 or 2 of these vlog rides a week right now, only because it's, technology-wise and time-wise, it's just the easiest way for me to be able to talk about stuff. I'm starting to get, a few people commenting, and I really appreciate that. I like that. So please comment, share your thoughts. Talk about how you look at gaming, not necessarily specific games. We'll talk about 76 probably next time. But how you look at games in general, how you engage with them. What is your engagement like for games versus other types of media? Do you see the similarities of engagement that I was talking about with books? And the way, especially, games that have a character creation element and a customization element, how they draw you in. Let me know your thoughts. You can also hit me up on Twitter. Happy to have you do that. And peace.